evening, everyone, and welcome to MPC's Guest Authors Series featuring poet Brenda Hillman. My name is Brenda Carey. I'm an instructor here on campus. I teach both creative writing and English. And since we're going to share some poetry tonight, I thought it'd be appropriate to mention that MPC is offering a poetry workshop writing class in the fall of 2014, if any of you are interested in that. And that's part of the semi-new creative writing certificate here on campus. Before we get started with Brenda, there's a couple people that I'd like to thank for making tonight possible. First, I'd like to thank Michelle Brock and Rosa Arroyo from the Humanities Division office. I'd also like to thank Jeanette Haxton. She's responsible for the posters and tickets and advertisements for the guest authors events, as well as the Humanities Division and the English Department. And tonight wouldn't be possible without, of course, Henry Marchand, who heads the creative writing program and who was gracious enough to invite Brenda to our campus, as well as the MPC Foundation, and of course, through the generosity of the Arts Council from Monterey County. Tonight's event will be broadcasted at some point on YouTube, and if you're interested in seeing past guest author series events, those will also be on YouTube as well. I'm sure you all could figure out how to do a search on YouTube for past guest author series events at MPC. Before I invite Brenda up, I'd like to just discuss her a bit. We're thrilled to have her on campus, and it's very special when a poet like Brenda comes to campus and shares her work with us. Brenda is a Californian, an educator, an activist, and she has a lot of poetry out there in the world for us to read. Her latest book, Seasonal Works with Letters on Fire, was recently published, but she has a total of 9 collections of poetry out there, along with several essays and single poems as well. Her latest work, this one, I've read a lot about what others are saying about it, and some of the words that others have used to describe this particular book are energetic and fierce and deep and lyrical. But I think as I was reading about what others had to say about Brenda's work, there were these 2 consistencies that came up over and over again. The first thing that was mentioned about Brenda is that she is a craftsperson. She's very aware of how poetry works, how it functions, how to craft an excellent poem. She pays acute attention to language, form, style, metaphor, and place. But something else that came up over again is that her poetry is also accessible, that it kind of cuts right to the heart of the human experience, to that creative gut. It's the thing that I think most people are drawn to with poetry initially, is how it makes you feel. So her poems are, in her work, what she does is she's able to bridge those two, both the stylistic part and the senses, and bring them together, which I think most poets hope that their poetry can do, is function on both of those levels. Brenda's also been nominated, this book has been nominated, her latest book, Seasonal Works with Letters on Fire, was nominated for the 2013 National Book Award for Poetry, and she's received numerous awards and nominations for things, and it would take far too much of your time tonight hearing me talk about her awards instead of her poetry. But there was one special nomination that I just need to mention because I think it is really neat. Poets and Writers magazine nominated or included Brenda on their list of the top 50 most inspirational authors in the world. I think that's really special that we have someone here that's going to share some of those inspirations with us tonight. Brenda is going to be available after her reading for some questions and for a book signing. Books are available in the back for you to purchase and for her to sign as well. Okay, so let's welcome her.
Thank you for that beautiful intro. And thanks to the English department, the humanities program, and especially to Henry and to the students I talked to today, and to all of you for your committed work in literature and in your writing. And It's just an honor to be here. It's a beautiful campus, and it fills my heart with pleasure to see your work and to see what you're doing. I planned a little reading tonight that would kind of cut across different kinds of poetry and different relationships to poetry, and to kind of maybe inspire you to write some of your own work in slightly different ways, or to think about poetry in as wide a way as you can. I came to poetry in order to free my soul, because I felt that there are so many things in our culture and in all kinds of parts of your life that are constricting, that stop your freedom. And I felt as if the relationship to the imagination that you have in your writing is very special, and no one can take it away from you. And that really what's happened in poetry in the last about 150 years has been to really free up form, and to make form in an entirely different and open and amazing way, so that you can really understand poetry is correct no matter how you write it. It is correct. Now that doesn't mean you will get an A on every poetry assignment. If if your teacher has a standard of like you have to turn in 3 poems and you turn in 2 poems or something, but there's no such thing as an incorrect poem. And so I went to poetry in order to get this kind of relationship between the imagination and the outside world, and to make a bridge through language. And so I wanted to start with a poem. I thought I'd read poems in kind of little pairs, that would maybe even talk, be twins, but they would have a little conversation with each other. So this poem, I'm going to read 2 poems that involve childhood, and this is from my new book. Or actually, no, this is from Practical Water, which is the previous book. It's called Girl Sleuth, and it came from thinking about reading Nancy Drew as a child. Girl Sleuth. A Brenda is missing. Where is she? Summon the seeds and weeds, the desert bushes. Phone the finch with the crowded beak. A little pretenda is learning to read in the afternoon near the cactus caves. Near oleander and pulpy caves, with a click-click of the wren and a skirr of the thrasher, a skinny pretenda is learning to read till the missing Brenda is found. Drip of syllables like olives near the saguaro. Nancy Drew will find the secret in raincoats and Wednesdays and sticks. Nancy, whose spine is yellow or blue, will find the pretenda in 1962. Nancy, who has no mother, who takes suggestions from her father and ignores them. Clean goes the wren, ignoring the thorn. They cannot tell the difference. Click of the smart dog's nails on linoleum. Nancy bends over the clues of Brenda's locket and dress, word by word, between syllables a clue. Where has the summer gone, the autumn? Are they missing too? Maybe Nancy will parse the secret and read the book report on Nancy Drew. Neat, pretty, sly, cute, syllable by syllable, and still no Brenda. Nancy puts her hand to her forehead. Is the missing girl in the iron bird? Is the clue to the girl in the locket? So, as most of you know, Nancy was always looking, and it seems to me one of the things that's happened in poetry in the 20th century at least is that the idea of the subjective self is sort of questioned at the very roots of it. So what is a self? It's really all of us together, but we're always trying to find ourselves through our childhood and so on. And obviously, and I believe that identities matter too. So this takes place right now, when children have started to learn in grade school. The letters learn to breathe twice. When the danger of fire has passed, the children, even when wanting to text, form letters with pencils, tracing gray skin around the unsayable, while geese honk overhead, in their wedge of funny adults. The children try to be normal, though no one knows what normal is. In nearby gardens, the unwanted dandelion, Taraxacum officinale, a large squash, prepares for harvest, its S-shaped stem with moisture bent. Children braid languages, and some are praised for confidence, but who praises the garden for all that breath? The cheerful, mild, constant anxiety of your childhood turned to writing. Then meaning came with its invincible glare. The page had borders but no limit, and you loved letters then. Their breath allowed not to decide as it curved between skin bearer and the being said. That poem makes reference to cheerful, mild, constant anxiety of your childhood. And I don't know about your childhoods, but it seems like it's possible to have a happy childhood but still be constantly anxious. You know, and those twin things can exist, like you're always anxious, but you're still pretty happy. And that was my experience in growing up in Tucson in the 50s. I spend a lot of time in West Marin, and my husband and I pass by the little West Marin school, and I think, oh, the children are learning to read. They're tracing letters that is like the outside skin of something. And I love that thought. So I overheard somebody in back of me while I was sitting there talking about having to write a Halloween poem. And I thought maybe that was an assignment that some of you had, was to write a Halloween poem, or yes, Henry's nodding. So I'm going to read a Halloween poem that actually started this fire book. And it started very near here as my husband and I were driving one day about 5 years ago. We looked out in the pumpkin fields, and I saw the beautiful pumpkins, and they were just all tons and tons of pumpkins in the field, and they were so numerous. And I was thinking, oh, they all have eyes inside of them, those white eyes, and they're staring up inside the pumpkin. So this makes reference to that, and Ambassador Clown refers to, I have a friend, Michael Ondaatje, who's a novelist, and he referred to having once seen an ambassador dressed as a clown get into the back of a diplomat's car. And so I thought that was sort of wonderful, so I stole it from him. He knows. To spirits of fire after harvest. Between earth and its noun, I felt a fire. What does it mean by I, Mrs.? It means, and I quote, one of the vowels in the brain and some of the U's. We were interested in the type of thing humans can't know, interested in the kinds of thing animals think, a rabbit or a skink. You Mrs. Skiltonianus, when autumn brings a grammar, wasps circle the dry stalks, and you can totally see through amber ankles dangling in dazzle under our Lord, the Son of Literature. Between noon and its noun, there were ridged and golden runes on pumpkins, bluish gourds in the fields, their white eyes lined up inside. Wait a sec. Please don't nail the door shut. The air is friendly and non-existent as Veronica's veil. Earth, don't torment your fool, your ambassador clown. Bring the X of oxygen and sex, a fox running sideways through present noon. That refers to Veronica's veil. I don't know if any of you grew up really strictly Catholic, but Veronica supposedly had a veil that had the imprint of Jesus's face that she wore, and you know, it's an apocryphal story. This is also an autumn poem, and I'm just really in love with autumn. I think it's just the best season, and it's so beautiful. There's a line from Keats' Season of Mists and Mellow Fruitfulness. That's the first line of his Ode to Autumn. So And this refers to a moment where in autumn you're looking at ferns and they start to uncurl kind of into the air. Patience swoons in the sword ferns. Deep in the earth a grief had been heard. Right behind that, a local mystery. What do you mean by mystery, Mrs.? The parallel series that sink in the mist, tentacles of limestone, Jupiter drops through Pegasus, and huckleberries line up like eyes in the matinee. Deep in the earth, an unprecedented seed. Hearing leans from the words, early, earth, hearth, all have ears in them. I can hardly bear it, yet I go out. What can't you bear? Which, by the way, also has an ear in it. The tender exactingness, electrons swoon in the sword fern, polysticum munitum, and after the rain, sexy tips of celadon. Sorry, breathe under the fronds. Womanly shadow, why don't you try? Can't. My love and I are tired and cannot fly. Okay then, it is noon in the orange you wish for. It is night in the wretched war. A gasp in all creation, a stem pushes up through its prime. That, the lines, tentacles of limestone, Jupiter drops through Pegasus. I have an astronomer friend or an astrophysics friend who teaches at St. Mary's where I teach, and he emailed me and he said, you know, actually Jupiter never drops through Pegasus, no matter how you slice it. And I said, no, we were standing up at Mount Shasta and somebody told us that Jupiter was dropping through the constellation Pegasus, and he said, no, it never happens. I said, well, it's a metaphor then. I like the way it sounds, and it is okay. So that's what I mean by poetry is always right. Poets win. I thought I'd read two. That was two autumn poems. I'm going to read two bird poems. This is the first poem in my book, Practical Water. So I decided 20 years ago that I was going to write 4 books on the elements, earth, air, water, fire. And so it took me about 4 years to write each one, 4 or 5 years. So this was the water book, and it came right before. Practical Water, it's called. And this is the first poem in Practical Water. Partita for Sparrows. We bury the sparrows of Europe with found instruments, their breasts light as an ounce of tea. Where we had seen them off the path, their twin speeds of shyness and notched wings near the pawnbroker's house by the canal, in average neighborhoods of the resistors, or in markets of princely delphinium and flax, flying from awnings at unmarked rates to fetch crumbs from our table, half spinning back to clefts of grillwork on external stairs we would descend much later. In rainy neighborhoods of the resistors, where streets were taken one by one, where consciousness is a stair or path, we mark their domains with notched sticks of hickory or chestnut or ash, because our cities of princely pallor should not have unmarked graves. Lyric work, flight of arch, death bridge to which pattern being is parallel. They came as if from the margins of the painting, their average hearts half spinning our little hourglass upon the screen. My husband and I were spending time in Berlin, and I was thinking a lot about poets and sort of the tragic difficulties of history. And we found a little dead sparrow outside of our apartment, and I only had a spoon, so I buried it with a spoon. So we bury the sparrows of Europe with found instruments. It's literal, but a metaphor also. I think of that poem as kind of an homage to the poet Czesław Miłosz and also the poet Barbara Guest, both of whom died around the same time. So the other, let's see, so I'm going to read a really crazy bird poem that is called Two Summer Obads After John Clare. And John Clare is a great romantic poet who went crazy, like many poets went crazy. Two Summer Obads After John Clare, and it's in two parts. Tohi, Pipilo chrysalis, wakes a human. A woman tosses, gulf disaster, stir, sister, aster, aster, ass, asp, CP, CP, P, BP, 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 scree, scree, we didn't need to move so fast. 2. Woman in red sweater to hummingbird. We no, I'm not sweet, not sweetie. I'm not something to eat. You know, the Anna hummingbirds, they buzz you if you have anything bright on. They buzz your head. So I'm going to read a poem by one of your classmates that's in Scheherazade, the MPC literary magazine, and the student's name is Nicholas Spitz. And I was reading this afternoon, and I was really enjoying your work. It's really beautiful work, and so I thought I'd read one of the poems because many of the poems really struck me, and this poem, there's a lot of poetry about sort of how creation happened. You know, I think of it as, you know, the fancy term would be ontogenic myth making, where you're making up stories about creation. So this is called Earthrise by Nicholas Spitz. Drifting through the formless void, darkness all around, there is a shimmer of sound like the siren's song reaching through space and time. And in an instant, in an ocean of seeing, we agree to meet on those distant heaving shores. And I am falling now, falling through the font, swimming into being, into the dialectic, the mythical, exquisite life of Earth. I thought that was really beautiful. There are many beautiful poems, and so I have other chances I'll read more out of that. So I wrote a little, at the end of the fire book, I wrote a little series of poems that are split in half, and Brenda was talking about my interest in form. I often make up my own forms, and I was writing little split form poems to my mother, where there's a column on one side and a column on the other, and you can read them across if you want, or you can read the columns separately. And I'm going to read this for my mother, my mother is very special, as are all of your mothers, and she is special in many ways. She's from Brazil. She was born in Brazil and she grew up there, and she's completely bilingual, even at almost 90 years old. And she's a householder, and she is impeccable at running a household and organizing for everybody's life so that they can enjoy their life. And I think it's a form of unpaid labor that many women do that is completely amazing. So I wrote 12 poems for her about her householding and kind of connected it with the galaxies. Light galaxies sleep for our mother. Between work and human, her style of love will boycott time for children. Asked for change, for march of dimes, feeds the wild, her kindness, brain of a lily, aspirin in the water, one aspirin like the sun. Put plastic on the guest bed mattress, fixing radios, firsthand, luminous names. Visit our mother. The state-worn gravity garments need fixing. Gravity declines, luminous names beyond dust. Abide with us, O Mother, abide, beyond work, letters and days. Universe, you second-hand wedding dress, infinity cloth, cover her when she sleeps, when she rests at night. Let her not forget us when she closes both her eyes. So one of the things that we were doing for a while, and it's not something, I think civil disobedience can come in many flavors and forms. This took place at a foundation where they had just approved the money for the surge in Iraq. Experiments with poetry are taken outdoors, an essay on choosing a new camera. And we were talking today, Mark and others, we were talking in the class about the prose poem and what it is. And it's a compressed piece of prose that, acts like a poem but looks like prose. So this is a prose poem. Some friends and I visited a panel on war and money. They were telling lies on the panel, so we shouted, then they threw us out. Their publicist chased us, hitting Dee with her fists, and smashed my camera on my head. We stood outside, waiting to settle the matter. A man in a good suit came out to the sidewalk. He had watery blue eyes. I said, I won't press charges if your foundation regrets the assault and pays me for the camera. He said, we won't turn you over to the Attorney General if you get off the premises. I said, this is a public sidewalk and there is no Attorney General. Gonzalez had resigned some weeks before. The man said, you people are endangering the country with your tactics. I said, you people are endangering the world with your corporate wars. He said, I'm a veteran of 2 wars. I forget how Jesus came up. I said, Jesus opposed killing human beings. The man said, God knows some wars are necessary. I said, I didn't say God, I said Jesus. The Capitol Hill cops argued with Dee, who wouldn't give her name. Dee is calm and tall as the Statue of Liberty, whereas I am a short Irish hothead. The man and I have reached our limit. Now should be the moment when we recognize each other's humanity, but we each think the other will destroy the world. This is where poetry can be helpful. Poetry goes past the limit. It makes extra helpful nerves between realities. Threads float from the man's tweed coat and weave a pink flag of no nation. Ancestors circle Capitol Hill in a braid, including Ginsburg and Blake. They build small fires around the city. Reinforcements are not far away. We can't see Occupy yet, but we feel there must be a future. Tomorrow we'll go back to our jobs. Crows are writing poems no one can read. Aw, aw, aw. I think of the man as a child, full of tiny, expensive longings, pushing toy trucks over the anthills at his home. Boom, he says, harming no one. He had joy once. Now on the sidewalk, he wants to kill us. The longer we can keep him busy, the more of his money we can waste. He hands me $279 in cash. Use your imagination, my mother used to say, meaning you don't have to use it, you are in it. And I'm going to close with 2 poems that one is kind of newish. Well, it's only a few months old, and when you finished a book of poems or a project, anything, you all know this, you sort of feel like you're never going to do it again, and so you sort of get worried. And I thought, gosh, maybe there won't be more poems, but they did start coming again. So if I can find this new one. And this is, I'm going to dedicate these two poems to you all. This came from trying to talk to a friend who was in a depression, and she's in a really bad place in her life, and she felt unredeemed. And you can probably tell I get a lot of, comfort from the non-human world, from trees and plants and animals and rocks. And I was in the mountains, and it was incredibly beautiful and just spiritually redeeming. All night crooked moonrise over mountain pines, scraping on the horizon, and the disk rose throbbing to the triple cloud. The enigma responded. In the forest, a wood mine swayed on the crest, while the angle brought groundwater, always a thin other, down to the river. Through lace life, late life, light rises bent. You stand a while, and if at midnight that raw moon slashes your bed through the cage of the blinds, oh, now the sweet owl calls to its cripple and hurries across the meadow where T-I-M-E is carried, tranquil and stretched. How can knowledge spread itself thus, unable to sort itself out? And you might weather this. You feared no one would love you, and when they did, you feared you would not be forgiven. Such a small word, time, yet it is friends with both nothings. And this is the last poem, and I feel like we get through these days and they're so complicated and they're so full and they're just full of everything. You know, your days are just full of everything, and you can hardly take the time to absorb your experience because the next experience is just coming along so fast. And the one thing that I think poetry is good for so many things, but you can get a whole bunch of different kinds of experience in this little, like, compressed space. It's like a caramel or something, and it's really packed. So this is one of those times when I was thinking about after a day when you can just talk to someone you love and all that experience comes out. So thank you so much for your attention, and I think we have plenty of time for a few questions after, and you can ask me questions. After a very long, difficult day, you talk to your loved ones at night. It is a kind of modernism. Color sees into you, thinks a warm path, a tint of meaning brought from how you feel. Then you are double, the owl calls out, Taito alba in your sleep. Screep, skr, heart-shaped face emitting loose nouns. Under its turf, the smart mouse turns, the fierce dead merge with the recently born, where earlier they emptied what you seek. How will you be known? Some registered complaints. You pass them in the hallway, their new haircuts. The bosses are known by new wars. What salmon are left hurry upstream, cold swaths in the bay. Linnets by rose fire at the edges. Linnet or finch, the word edge has wings made of E. The moon rests in a mantle of minutes, its boundaries in back of the trees. Boundaries are known by their nothings. You will be known by your dreams. Thank you.